WISC TV now presents For the Record.
Retired volunteers are dedicated individuals, and as volunteers, they are a force. And that's next on For the Record. Thanks for joining us. I'm Neil Heinen. So, what do you plan to do in your retirement? Or maybe a better question to ask is, who are all these terrific volunteers helping out at dozens and dozens of nonprofits throughout our community? An answer to both: READI. Retired volunteers are dedicated individuals. We'll talk about READI's role in our community, but best of all, we will talk about its exciting future as I welcome to For the Record Kathy Martinson, Senior Director of Corporate and Community Engagement for United Way of Dane County, and Dave Weber, Chair of the READI Leadership Committee. Thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Before we get into the history of READI, Kathy, maybe it'd be nice just to put it into the context of volunteering in our community and the role that United Way has played for so many years as sort of a place for volunteers to come and get their start.
Yeah, and that's just one of the most exciting parts of my job, is that every day I get to talk to people who want to help others in the community. And so that's what we do. We have a website, volunteeryourtime.org, where any nonprofit organization can register their volunteer opportunities. So we have probably 300 nonprofits, 700-800 volunteer opportunities that are listed. So no matter what people want to do, and I think people genuinely want to give back to their community, but they don't always know how to get started, or what can I do, what difference can I make? And so that's what we do, is we help people find, what's your passion, when do you want to volunteer, what would you like to get out of it, how do you want to do it, what issues, causes are important to you, and help them find that good match. You
and the team at United Way are always so good about describing this. When people talk about United Way, you always say United Way is the volunteers. It's the people who help. They're the ones that help create the agenda for change, but who perform these services. They're a force in this community. They are, and I mean, United Way wouldn't operate without volunteers, and it's an exciting part of the job is just all the different, we have hundreds of volunteers that are involved in our work, from deciding how the money that's raised through campaign is invested in nonprofit organizations and their programs, monitoring those, seeing what the outcomes are, raising money, of course, through campaign, and various committees, our boards. We've got people who are impacted by services who are giving us their advice and opinions on the work that we're doing, so that we're kind of having this great vetting group to make sure we're keeping it real and have those connections into the community that we would never have on our own if we didn't have this amazing network of volunteers. It seems to me over the years that I've seen measurements of communities on the number of volunteers that they have. I mean, we're pretty strong, aren't we? We are. We're quite high when you look at similar sized cities, and we always rank very high. We do see that some of the volunteer numbers are increasing slightly, but hours increase a lot. So we do have a lot of the same people doing more, which is great, but that also means that there's many opportunities for more people to get involved, and we need more people to do that. And it's just kind of knowing how to take that first step, and we're happy to help them do that. Dave, I think it was probably 10 years ago or more. My wife Nancy and I were writing a piece for Madison Magazine, and we went out to Second Harvest, and the executive director at the time was showing us around, and I remember he led us into a room, and there were about 30 people in the room, and I think they were sorting eggs, as I recall. A big donation of terrific fresh eggs that had been brought in, and he said they were all retired Oscar Mayer employees. And that was kind of my introduction to the role Oscar Mayer played in all of this. You're a retired Oscar employee. Talk about READI.
READI was formed in 1993 by Oscar Mayer to create social opportunities and volunteer opportunities for their retirees. They've worked together for all these years, and when you go from working with people to just retired, you have to have something to do in retirement. So they created the opportunity with READI and started looking for projects for groups. Hence, Second Harvest. We're there on the first and third Thursdays of every month, and Second Harvest would like us to be there every Thursday.
I mean, isn't that nice?
Yes. And they have us right now separating and sorting meat, of course.
Of course. How natural.
And on a typical Thursday, we do about 6,000 pounds of donated product. separated by category: beef, pork, chicken, and miscellaneous.
Do you remember, so back in the 90s when you were working at Oscar Mayer, do you remember READI? Do you remember seeing it as part of what retirees did at Oscar Mayer?
Not really, because in '93 I was working the off shifts, and all of the READI activities take place during the day, and you don't see much when you're on third shift.
Yeah. But it was, I don't know, I'm sure there were other businesses that had retiree groups that were doing volunteering. But because of the number of Oscar retirees, it kind of had an identity all of its own, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, we currently have about 250 active retired volunteers. Not all of them are Oscar Mayer people anymore. So, and we're looking to expand.
Yeah.
And create more opportunities, because there's too many opportunities for the number of volunteers that are currently out there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. This leads me to my friend Frank Alfano calling me and saying, I've got a harebrained idea, Neil, which is what he did. And he was pretty excited about the growth of READI and its relationship to United Way, and an event coming up that we'll talk about in a little bit. But talk about why this makes sense to kind of coordinate some of this.
Well, we were very excited to have READI part of United Way now. So with the changes at Oscar Mayer, it just, you know, the opportunity provided was now READI can be available to anybody who's retired to participate. And when I had the pleasure of working with the group that first got READI started way back, and you know, the whole idea was building an opportunity for camaraderie, people to do things together, to stay active in retirement, and see folks that they used to work with, and just kind of continue that sense of community and make an impact. So when that, you know, we were approached to say, hey, is there something that United Way might want to do with READI now? It was like, oh, please, it would be great if we can work together to expand this opportunity, to provide, you know, increase that network and involve more retirees. So it just was a natural fit. As we were talking about before, we were always helping people find volunteer opportunities. So this was just a great way to expand that, that work.
It seems like a very natural progression for both READI and United Way. You touched just a little bit on some of the benefits of volunteering, and when we come back, I want to expand on that a little bit to the community and to the people who volunteer, and we'll do that right after this. We are talking about READI. Retired employees are dedicated individuals, the retirement organization that started at Oscar Mayer, and it is spawned who knows how many volunteers over the years that have been involved in community activities. READI is going to partner now with United Way, and we are talking about that this morning with Kathy Martinson and Dave Weber. And we hit a little bit, Kathy, we're talking about the benefits of volunteering. And I'd like you just to expand on that a little bit. I think a lot of people, you know, they probably think of volunteering as part of what they would like to do in their retirement. Although I mean, there are people who are volunteering now from high school on and finding it very, very rewarding. So when you talk to people, because I think there's also a little bit of an intimidation too, what is this commitment? How do I do it? Am I going to be able to do it? How do you describe it?
So we always really start by asking people what they care about, because I mean, there's way more opportunities than anybody could ever do, and it gets to be overwhelming. Because and even within an area that you might be interested in, if it's homelessness or literacy or the environment or children or helping older adults stay independent, to think about, well, what can I as one person really do about that, can seem sort of intimidating and overwhelming. But that's what we need, is one by one, if we each do what we can do, collectively it's incredible. And so really helping people to see, okay, what is your niche and where can you make a difference? So we talk about that, you know, your passions, the time available, how do you want to volunteer? Would you like to volunteer on your own or with a group, which is why READI is such a great group to be part of. And then just sort of narrow that down to say, okay, here are some options that sound like they really fit with what is going to work for you, that you can then check into and go further. So I think it's taking that huge, you know, pool of things that are needed and some kind of the overwhelming needs in the community and honing it in to say, oh, well, I could do that. I can fit that in, and that sounds really exciting to me.
You know, as long as you and I have been doing this, I'll bet there are people who come in and say, you know, I volunteered when I was a kid. When I was in high school, I did this, and then I raised my family, or I had a work career, and now I want to get back to it.
Yep. Or people who have had something happen in their life, and they say, you know, I want to give back. I got help in this area. Now it's my chance to give back in that particular area. So. And you know, we're seeing more and more kids volunteer in school, families volunteering together. So as people are entering the workforce and going through their life, that's kind of what they expect, that's sort of what they do, and they expect it of their workplace. Yeah. And so now, you know, when folks retire, that might have been something they've been doing for a good chunk of their life. Now, how do I keep doing that if it was more associated with family or work? And again, that's where READI is so great, because it's that next transition of like, okay, now here's a new group you can be involved in, keep that passion going, and meet all kinds of new people as well.
I kind of like that contrast, because I think it really illustrates the potential for retirees volunteering. But the idea that for the last couple of decades, I think we've noticed young people volunteering more. It's just become more of how they think about their education and their role in the community.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of exciting to get kids started at that age, because of the potential later on.
Right, and we're seeing, you know, as millennials enter the workforce, that they expect that of the places they're working for. What is your civic engagement, you know, philosophies, and how are you involved in the community? What's your corporate, you know, values? And so I think people are really looking for that as they enter the workforce. And so I'm hoping, you know, companies are recognizing that more and more. And again, I think that'll just continue on then throughout people's career and now beyond.
The READI grew beyond Second Harvest, right? It includes.
Oh yeah, yep. We do packing bags for the Burby Derby, the Ironman event. We do prairie burns and prairie seedings for the county. We participate at Halloween at the zoo and Zoo Run, and you spoke of younger children. My grandson comes and passes out water on the Zoo Run.
Yeah, isn't that great?
We're all standing there with our cups, and they're all going to the 7-year-old. You know.
And I would assume, Dave, that it's a combination of what, nonprofits coming to you and saying, hey, have you got some people who might be able to help us, and members of READI who say, I'd kind of like to get involved in this.
Yes, we field requests all the time, and right now our primary thing is groups. But as we expand under the United Way's wing, we're looking to do more individuals items too. So.
And have you been welcoming non-Oscar retirees into the group for a while now?
Oh yeah, for the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a lot of non-Oscar Mayer people come.
I just think that might be important for people out there who are thinking, well, I'd really like to be a part of this, but if it's all Oscar employees, I won't have anything in common with them.
Well, you won't have anything in common with them as an employee and employer, but when you're standing on a line separating meat,
exactly,
strike up a conversation.
And we're all the same there.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
what's the potential here, Kathy, in this community for?
Wow, I mean,
our capacity for volunteerism?
It's huge. I mean, there's, you know, we've got people keep saying we've got the greatest number of nonprofits per capita of any city in the United States.
Right.
So, and we're very fortunate that we are very resource rich. I mean, there's a lot of organizations, a lot of resources and services in the community, which is wonderful, but they really all rely on volunteers, be they for group projects like READI's doing now, for some special skills expertise, board members, just a variety of ways that every nonprofit needs volunteers. And the more people we have volunteering, the more those services can grow, because they just would not exist without it. So, yeah, I think it's just sort of endless of what the potential really is. And, you know, as Dave said, now READI is looking to not only do group projects, which is a big part of what they do, but, you know, a lot of folks have special skills that professional skills that they would like to continue doing in retirement. You know, those boomers are going to be retiring at some point, and a lot of people want to continue using those skills to stay sharp, and that's what we've enjoyed doing, so let's continue to be able to do that. Those are skills that, you know, for nonprofit capacity building, say boards and such, that are really needed as well. So
I was going to ask you about that. How are boomers as volunteers? How are we as a volunteer group?
So there's a lot of us, and a lot of people are retiring, and I think that's what it is. I think people really want to stay very active, and we're seeing that, you know, our generation wanting to continue to use those skills and expertise, and how can we then apply that later on to still show that we're relevant and can kind of keep that professional development going even into our retirement years.
And I think that's exciting, just the potential impact that group could have. A group that you would think would be wanting to continue to make a difference, if that's indeed part of the DNA that we developed in the 60s.
Well, as Dave mentioned, with your grandson coming, I think this family volunteering is great, and if grandparents are bringing grandkids or aunts and uncles or parents, to bring the kids and involve them, and they're very welcome at the different projects where it's appropriate to have kids there. I mean, that's wonderful. Family bonding, and again, instilling that sense of civic engagement and volunteerism at a young age, and this is just what our family does. We volunteer, and that just will continue on, because we see when kids start volunteering, however that happens with family or through school, that becomes a part of who they are, and they continue to do that as they grow up.
Yeah. Well, there's a big kickoff event coming up, and we're going to talk about that when we come back on For the Record right after this. There's an event coming up that will be sort of the formal unveiling of the next evolution of READI, which is Retired Employees Are Dedicated Individuals. And it started at Oscar Mayer with a group of retirees who were volunteering, and it has grown to become a very inclusive organization that will expand the volunteer pool and the volunteer opportunities in Dane County in partnership with United Way of Dane County. And Kathy Martinson from United Way of Dane County is with me, along with Dave Weber from READI. Before we talk about the event, though, I was thinking that just in terms of the role that volunteers play in our communities and in our lives, I mean, unfortunately, government is doing less and less, and it's a political conversation, but it's also probably a cultural conversation, and volunteers are probably increasingly important as we kind of work together as a community to fill gaps and to do things that government just can't do anymore, and that's the reality that we live in.
It is, and I mean, in many ways, without, as we were saying before, without volunteers, services wouldn't be provided in our community to the extent that they are, and in a lot of ways, volunteers do it best. It is a lot of pressure on nonprofit organizations to pick up the slack of where government may be, backing off or letting up. So there is a lot of pressure in those areas. So the need for volunteers is even greater, which means the opportunities are even greater. But yeah, there are a lot of challenges.
I just think it's important to keep that in mind, because as rewarding as volunteering can be for those who volunteer, it also is an important part of our social structure, of our civic structure, and maybe that's something that retirees understand a little bit better than most, Dave.
Well, most retirees go from working 60+ hours a week to nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
You've got to have something to keep you active, because if you don't stay active, you're only one step away from the grave. Yep. So you get out there and you do things that you wouldn't do when you were normally working. Like I never did anything with Second Harvest or with the county, with the Burns, or with the zoo. Yeah. But I appreciated taking my kids to the zoo, now taking the grandkids to the zoo, and all of that takes people to keep going.
And have you volunteered in all three of those areas?
Yes.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
I mean, all three of those are just so rich in what they do.
And you get out there, and like I said, you meet people that you wouldn't normally have any contact with, So.
Which I think is a big part of it, is that it really builds a sense of community, that, when you're out volunteering, be with a group that you may not know everybody in that group, you get to know them. That builds a sense of community. But you could be in parts of the city that you normally wouldn't go to. So that helps, because we get pretty isolated in our job and in our home, and so the more we can be out in the city and the county and experiencing different organizations, events, people that we're working with, it just helps build a sense of community that we need so badly.
Do you reach out, Kathy, to try to diversify the pool of volunteers too, as to reflect the community that we live in?
Absolutely, yeah, that's very important.
I would think that faith communities in particular, and others in communities of color, would be places where volunteers and retired volunteers, would find some entry into READI. So what's the event? Talk about the kickoff.
So on June 9th, at American Family, which has been a sponsor for READI now, which is great, we are holding the United Way READI launch. And it's just a great way to introduce READI to the entire retiree community of Dane County. So
anyone is welcome to come.
Anyone is welcome. It's free.
I like that idea.
Yeah, and it's just a good way to hear about how READI got started, what's going on now, and hear from some of the nonprofit organizations. We've got a panel of 4 or 5 different organizations that will be there to talk about the impact READI's made for their organizations. And then just invite anybody who wants to join in to do so. And
they'll learn about some of the initial learning opportunities, knowledge about commitment, what's involved, and even getting ready to volunteer, right? I mean, because that's pretty important. And what do you tell them early on? Here's what are the first steps?
Sign up. You know the best.
Well, first steps is now you go to the United Way webpage and you click on the READI, and you'll see a list of projects that are out there that are available, and the project coordinators. If you call that project coordinator, they will get you involved, and make sure that it's something you can physically handle, because we're not all as mobile as we used to be.
Right.
From the Heart Association, we do mailings. The zoo, we're passing out water, and we run the bounce house for Halloween at the zoo, and that involves lifting little kids in and out of the bounce house. And
so a whole variety of activities.
Yes. And there's something there for everybody. I mean, all you have to do is have the capability to get yourself there. And in all cases, that's not true either, because if someone lives near you, they'll pick you up and bring you.
Yeah.
So,
well, I love that this is a part of who we are. That this is a part of Dane County. Is this volunteer? Thank you both very much for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you.
We're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this. Thanks to Kathy Martinson, Dave Weber, and READI, and thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.